You know, I prefer the games I play to be difficult. Challenges like Absolute Radiance and Hollow Knight, or playing League of Legends without your chat disabled. But this is not what I wanted in Genshin Impact. I will easily come here and I will tell you that this is the hardest Spiral Abyss that we have ever had by far. Prior to this, it was probably an Abyss like way back in 1.2 or something. It was before Venti had got his first rerun, and anyone without Venti, we were suffering hard. Literally just running around frantically trying to bop off hilly churls one by one as they're just slowly picking away your monolith. And it's, God, it wasn't fun because you're just trying to do a job that you don't have the tools to do. And I gotta imagine for a lot of players, this Abyss is exactly that. I am normally a little bit of a dissenting opinion in the Genshin community. When everyone is complaining about resin and artifacts, I generally think like these things are fine. Or when people complain about an Abyss that has 15 Rift Towns in it, I'm saying, you know, just use like the healers you have. It's not that bad. This time, I am right here with you. The only thing I have to go off here is my Discord server, and I know a lot of people in there were really annoyed with this Abyss. They're either having a really hard time with it, or they just genuinely hate how it's laid out. And I'd really be shocked if I was a dissenting opinion here saying that this is probably the worst Abyss we have ever had. Not only in terms of difficulty, but also, well, I think it's unfairly difficult, but because of how it's laid out. Doing this Abyss all in one go is a really annoying and challenging thing to do. To get the exact right team comps on both sides to actually go just 36 stars one run is really hard. And while I always advise players who are struggling to target each chamber one by one because it makes it a lot easier, but it's also very time consuming and it involves you doing the Spiral Abyss for more than you have to. And I don't think it's a very high population of people out there who do the Spiral Abyss for fun. Most of us are doing it for the rewards. Sometimes it's fun to try out new characters in the Abyss, but honestly, I don't think this one is one of them because it's restricting our character choices so goddamn much. And I can tell you, I have never wanted two Kazuhas more than I have in this Abyss. So let's just go over the layout one by one to discuss why I hate the Spiral Abyss so much. For starters, Whopper Flowers. I hate seeing these stupid plants in any Abyss they show up in. Anything that can burrow in the ground has such a high potential to just be obnoxiously annoying in the Spiral Abyss. Not to mention just one Whopper Flower might be standing 5 miles away channeling their stupid little elemental ability and they just refuse to go anywhere near you. But I will say that the Whopper Flowers and the first half of Chamber 1 are not the reason why it's difficult. It's what follows it. And the problem is that for Whopper Flowers and for the little like techno Doritos that spawn afterwards, I want Kazuha there because he just makes grouping them up so easy. I could probably shave a good 20-30 seconds off my first half clear just by having Kazuha in there instead of like anybody. But the issue is I can't seem to take Kazuha and Bennett out of the second half. If I do, that half suffers so badly that it just becomes unbearable. Now, I'm not saying that it's impossible to do without them. There's definitely teams out there that do. I have just personally found that they are the most effective combo to just deal with those heralds in somewhat of a decent way. So let's just move on to talking about this shithead and his two backup dancers. The real problem with this Spiral Abyss. Although I guess we should probably talk about the two Abyss mages and just why the hell are they even there? What are they doing? All they're doing is taxing our time. Is it really that hard to fight a Hydro and a Cryo Mage at the same time? No, it's really not. If those two are going to challenge you in any meaningful capacity, then the heralds that follow afterwards are going to absolutely annihilate you. And that's really the problem, is that they're just wasting so much of our time before we fight the most annoying trio of enemies we've probably ever dealt with. They're also the last thing that they're going to throw at you in that floor, so at least if they were first, we could keep timing ourselves against that trio and then decide, is this run worth continuing, and then go on from there, rather than it being the very last thing. It just means it's going to be very tedious to keep trying over and over to get a good run. The one nice thing you can say is at least they did it in Chamber 1. If this was the Chamber 3, oh my god. So once you finally do get past Chamber 1, you're rewarded with Chamber 2, a relatively easy chamber. There's really nothing special about this. But the thing is the Electroceanid is on the same half as the Herald. So let's say you brought a Burgeon team, a team that on paper looks really good against the first chamber. That team is probably not going to do very great against the Electroceanid because of how much it moves around. It likes to go high up in the air, and it also likes to dive around the map. Not exactly the kind of enemy you want to ideally be fighting when you're playing something that puts down traps on the field essentially and then blows them up in an AoE around them. Maybe it does just fine. I really don't know. I actually have never played a Burgeon team. On paper, it just doesn't sound like the best matchup in the world. Then you move on to Chamber 3, where everyone's favorite consecrated beasts are back. Not only that, but they're making us fight 4 of them with the same team, which honestly, probably not that bad of a thing given that you can put a really high DPS team on that half, and hopefully you leave yourself with enough time for the second team to do the Inquisitive Baptist. And I gotta be honest here, I don't know how to fight this boss. I fought him in the open world. That doesn't mean I know how to fight him in the Abyss, because in the open world, you're lucky if he sees one shield phase, because he just drops so fast. So far from what I gather from fighting him a couple times in the Abyss is that you do need a pretty decent variety of elements to actually fight him and get through all of his shields. And that way you can actually get to his downtime and DPS him. And what half is he on? Oh, of course he's on the same half as the Heralds. Now it's entirely impossible that I really don't know the mechanics of this boss fight, and there's something crucial that I'm missing that helps you get through the shields without having the necessary elements to properly counter them. Which, like, what are you doing? Why are you putting so many elemental checks on one half of the Spiral Abyss? Like, just how exactly are people with a very limited roster of characters expected to do this properly? Like, it just seems a little unfair to a lot of the player base to put something like this together. I don't know if they knew what they were doing, if they actually tested it and realized, wow, this is actually pretty restrictive. And again, you can target the Abyss chamber by chamber. It is a very effective way to handle an Abyss like this. It stops a lot of the annoying challenges of team building. And this Abyss particularly is probably the first time that I've ever had to do it in a very long time. Yes, I'm a filthy whale. I have a lot of things that other people don't have access to. I have constellations on some characters, and these things make the Abyss a lot easier for me. And despite some of my characters not having the best of artifacts, they're still pretty good in most cases. But all this stuff still isn't enough to stop me from having some issues with this Abyss. I can't just put a team willy-nilly together and go in there. I'm going to run into problems. I don't even necessarily believe that that is a problem in itself. I think that team building is part of the challenge of the Spiral Abyss, and as long as it's fair, it's perfectly fine because it can be kind of enjoyable to find just the right combination of characters that just kind of work for this current iteration of the Abyss. And what I have to imagine a lot of players are turning to right now is either building a Burgeon team out of nowhere if they didn't have one before, or trying to build a Pyro DPS that maybe they were ignoring for a long time like Diluc. Just anything to try to deal with the wave of nonsense that all those heralds throw at you in the first chamber. It kind of feels like the thing they were going for there was to counter them with swirls. You know, they have those chambers in the Spiral Abyss in the past where you encounter like a Frost Mage, a Pyro Mage, and a Hydro Mage all together, and the idea is just to group them up, swirl them, and they all destroy each other's shields. The thing is that can work with this chamber. You can use the Cryo Herald's shields to help you destroy the Hydro Heralds. We all know that the Hydro Herald, Cirque du So dumbass, loves to just do his acrobatic bullshit all over the map and just end up far away from anything else you're fighting. God forbid you're fighting multiple at the same time, and they always do their little crisscross bullshit and they end up on opposite sides of you. They are pretty well known for being obnoxious to fight. Normally, we just bring cryo characters to completely counter them. They stay completely frozen and you counter the most annoying mechanic about them, their mobility. But bringing a cryo character all of a sudden doesn't seem very appealing when you also have to fight 2 cryo heralds. Not to mention they are doing that very same thing to you. They are always freezing you. You are getting frozen so much, and if you're not being frozen, your cooldowns are being slowed. And if your cooldowns aren't being slowed, you're probably being afflicted by cryo and you're being slowed down. This Spiral Abyss is the Monkey's Paw version of what we've all been asking for. And for those of you not familiar with the Monkey's Paw story, the TLDR of the Monkey's Paw story is you wish for something and you get your wish fulfilled in a horrific way that basically makes you wish that you never wished for it in the first place. My biggest personal concern about this is that there is going to be those out there who enjoy this Abyss and speak out in favor of it, and that they're not thinking about just what this Abyss is like for people who don't have a robust roster. I can't imagine the challenge that players who don't have characters like Kazuha are going through right now, because I only wish that I had a second one. I could do a run without Kazuha at all. I'm not gonna. I'm not interested in suffering like that. I'm not a masochist. I don't particularly think the Spiral Abyss as it is currently designed is really built for a fair and engaging challenge. Certainly not when it's designed like this. As it currently stands, I think almost every aspect of the game is working against us here. The enemy AI likes to move around a lot. It makes it very unpredictable to have consistent runs, and all we can do is do slight things to manipulate their AI, but ultimately they're going to do what they want to do. The elemental checks here are nonsensical. There's so many of them and they're all over the place that it's really hard to build one cohesive team with a variety of units. Restrictions are often an important part of difficulty, but put too many of them on and all of a sudden it becomes unfun, unfair, and annoying. And ultimately, putting too many restrictions like this on team building in a game where the characters you own is dictated by how much money you spend or how lucky you get is really obnoxious. If you want to put a bunch of consecrated beasts in there with a monstrous amount of health, ridiculous damage, and that move around like a cat who is just around a vacuum cleaner that just got turned on, fine, I'll deal with it. But this is so much worse. They managed to make such a simple looking floor on paper an absolute hell. And honestly, kudos to them for managing to do that, but it sucks. I cannot wait till this one rotates out of the abyss. I will not remember it fondly. I'll remember it as a nightmare. So thank you to my members and my patrons. Thank you for watching, and good luck in this abyss.
Attaboy!